great, right? But there's this whole aspect of if you publish a book on Amazon, you have zero control of your audience. People will buy the book, but you have no ability to engage with them. So what authors ended up doing, they have to create like these bonus materials and that sort of thing that takes you outside of the book to some sort of mailing list. That way, now you can interact with them. I'm curious, like from Sahil, who created Gumroad, why did you decide to make that thing part of Gumroad, where you can sell your book and now you have access to your audience instead of you could just simply lock in people, right? But you decided to do the opposite. So I'm curious to hear more about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're competing, I guess, with Amazon primarily, and the biggest issue I think Amazon has for someone, a merchant on the platform is you sell a product to a customer and, let's say you make $50. The value of that transaction to you is $50, right? Because you have no email, you have no way of contacting them, you have no data to show even where they came from, like there's no learning there. You made $50, it's worth $50. You spend that $50 to make more money, etc. And so, yeah, Gumroad sort of started with a very different premise, which is like, we're not a marketplace. We're not bringing you customers. Instead, we're a SaaS tool, right? We're like Bitly. You use us, you use us to talk to your audience, but we're going to give you all that data as if it were your own emails, and a bunch of other information. You can always collect more on top of that. And, I just built it for myself. I just was like, this would be a cool tool for me. And obviously, if, I would want the emails because that's really, really important. And sort of fun fact about Gumroad, like the first version, I wanted to make the checkout process so simple. The bare minimum, currently Gumroad is an email, credit card number, CV code, and zip and expiry date, right? In the first version of Gumroad, it didn't even have an email. Like you could just enter the credit card information and pay. And then I realized, like, if they refresh or something goes wrong, basically we have their money and they don't have the product, and there's no way for us to ever know who even wanted the product in the first place. So we changed that pretty quickly. But yeah, it's always been really key, and I think it will always be key that we want to make it as easy as possible for people to stop using Gumroad if they want. If there's a feature that they really need or something, ConvertKit basically was born for this reason. And probably other startups too. And we don't want to win that way. We don't want to win because people are locked in. We want to win because we just have the best product. And I'd rather know if people are leaving, or want to leave sooner rather than later, so I can improve. We can improve the product.
That's awesome. And yeah, I'm curious to hear, like, what were the strategies that you guys made in order to promote the book? There's obviously social media, but what are the other aspects that you try to lean towards and to make it successful?
So yeah, I can start. I think my only strategy, to be honest, was to try to. It wasn't even intentional. Like, it's funny because I think all my products, I have 3 products now on Gumroad. I think all came where I wasn't intentionally trying to, build an audience for them. But what it ended up happening, if you were to look in reverse, you can attribute pretty much all their success to the fact that I had built an audience or built some credibility on them. But that first bit almost happened by accident. I was mostly talking online and about something that I happened to be doing, right? And people, on Twitter, on other places, on forums. I mean, Twitter is the one that I mentioned most because it's the one that's working most for me. But when I started, I was just building an audience, trying many different things. I was blogging, answering questions on Quora, going on Reddit, in the hacker news everywhere, right? I basically was trying to get myself known a little bit about certain topics that I happened to be interested in, and that sort of has been my strategy. So almost to play it by ear, to just be sharing what I'm figuring out, right? Especially after I left my job at Amazon, like I started just sharing about how I'm setting up myself as a self-employed person, what ideas I'm having. I started tweeting a bit about programming and AWS and other things, just because I happened to be building a software business and I was sort of doing a lot of that myself. And then I started talking about info products and building an audience, right? So sort of it started getting more about that, more interest. So sort of, yeah, my only strategy has been to try to pretty much give away everything that I know by default for free about many different things, right? And then play it by ear and sort of start to sort of be aware when there's almost some spillover that I constantly give away for free, either because the mediums that I'm using are just incompatible, or because it would just take me too much time, right, to answer everyone's nuanced question one-on-one on Twitter, or it just would be too it would just wouldn't work. So that's when I think the inspiration for products starts to appear for me. And so far it works really well, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, right, I mean, my audience is almost doing market research for me. It's almost telling me what it is interested to know more about. And sort of when it happens to be something that I'm always also interested to write about, sort of, I think that's the right combination, right? It's inspiration meeting opportunity. And my promotion, my second product, which wasn't an ebook, but it was a short video course, an hour and a half, me talking about building an audience, which I put on Gumroad. It made, let me see, it made almost $200,000. I think it just exceeded them in 7 months. Right? So this was even more successful than my first product. I mean, this the only promotion that I did, I think I tweeted about it maybe 5 times total since April of last year. Nothing else. I mean, it's been pretty much just word of mouth. But I think sort of I happen to have built so much credibility before launching it about the topic that it's just helped with the momentum, right? And it's just people keep referring to it and keep remembering about it, and yeah, that's been pretty much my strategy, if you were to call it that way. Just get word of mouth rolling, and let it roll.
Yeah, in your case, it's interesting because you're definitely like documenting your journey, and but you documented your journey in a way that is quite unique, right? You're not only, okay, here's what I'm doing randomly. You were doing that consistently, which is a super important aspect, and you were also doing that by being transparent, right? You were sharing numbers, and you're saying, hey, I just made 130,000, and Randall said, oh, okay, I made 40,000 with this book. I feel like that is a super important component of this whole journey, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to describe. That I try to, I don't think consistency is that important, or even 100% transparency. I think you just want to be helpful and inspiring, right? In general, basically, I mean, the reason I'm talking here is because other people inspired me. We had Adam here on the panel. He's definitely one that before I wrote my own, I created my first info products. Who was, one of the people who I've seen talking about this type of business, right? And he inspired me to consider even something like that, to do something like that myself. So I think it really helps when the things that you choose to share, are either helpful tactically, like you explain to people how, because you just figured it out yourself, right? And you're compressing maybe what you just learned over the last 6 months in a single tweet or in a short post. That's very useful. Or else you're just inspiring. You're just opening people's eyes to other options and opportunities that they might not have been aware of, right? And the less conventional they are, I think the more interesting they become, right? I mean, I would have never imagined like 3 years ago, right, that self-publishing an ebook could be a 6-figure income stream, right? But now sort of I'm aware of sort of dozens of people, hundreds of people actually doing that much. And whether you choose to do it or not, I think the fact that people seeing this type of information and making them pause and reflect on it is already very valuable in itself, right? And it's one of those things that you say, well, should I do something like this? Should I sort of adapt what this person just did to something that I know something about, and say it in my own way? That it's very, very, very useful, I think. So yeah, the numbers help. Like the numbers make everything more concrete. It's easier to show, like pretty much my way of documenting has been just taking screenshots from my, Gumroad dashboard or from other places. Like it's just, I think something just feels very authentic about it, and just easy for me as well to just take a screenshot instead of writing a 1,000-word blog post about it. But I think that's not enough. Right? I think what also helped me in my case is that I used to, I end up getting 100 comments, people asking questions. How did you start? How did you do that? What about this and that? And I just answer them. Right. I mean, still today, like I spend probably 3-4 hours a day on average on Twitter, mostly just answering people's questions. Right. I think I'm looking at my Twitter stats right now. I get like 100 tweet comments every day. Everyone that ends in a question mark, I try to answer it, right? Which is work. That takes time, but it helps a lot, sort of in building credibility, and and people remember you. Right? If you answer somebody's question, I think just something magical happens, right? People will just remember you as that person who helped them, who answered their question. Right? You've increased your odds that whenever you put something on the market in the future, they're going to take out their wallet and buy it, right? It's just because you've already helped them.
I can actually personally testify that works, Daniel, because you did that for me very early on last year. You gave me a Twitter profile review, and I was so blown away that you would, do something one-on-one like that for someone else. I immediately became your biggest fan, and I'm an affiliate for exactly one product on this planet, and it's your product. It is your product.
And you know what? Actually, it's interesting you mentioned this example, because that's actually probably something that I consider almost a failed experiment. Basically, when I started doing those, I got so many requests. I underestimated everything. I underestimated the time it's going to take me to do them. I underestimated how many requests I'm going to get. And I also used the wrong tool. Basically, I invited people to contact me from Twitter DMs, and Twitter DMs are just a mess for tracking. So in hindsight, I almost regret that, because I actually didn't manage to get to everyone. I sort of broke my promise. And some of them just disappeared from my Twitter DM list, so I can't even find them. So I probably was a bit too ambitious, but it's sometimes it's one of those experiments. Not everything works, but yeah, it's good that we got to meet at least, and there was a good outcome out of that exercise.
Yeah, it actually taught me a lot about, I think, doing things for other people that maybe don't scale in a way. For context, I did resume reviews for a ton of people online. And like you, I think I gave up several weeks, if not 2 months, of weekends, nights, mornings. And I just sat reviewing resumes, and people were so happy. And that grew my audience in a huge way. I became like the Twitter resume review person.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is I think if you want to be intentional about something, I think this is it. Like what Sander just described, that is just finding out something that you think you can help with. Again, depends on your skills, your knowledge, your sort of your abilities, your mediums of choice, and just try to help people in the best way you can. I mostly sort of settled on Twitter for various reasons. It just works well for me, but there's many other platforms, many other ways of doing it, and yeah, it looks of course there's a non-scalable aspect to it, especially when you're helping people one-on-one. But I think the internet sort of adds another scalable dimension to it, because the internet is so big that even if you're doing something niche, right, it has a tendency of helping you find thousands of people that are interested in what you're doing, and I think it's good to as well be a bit strategic. Like I was reflecting actually on something, like I hadn't still had any social media experience just before the last 2 years or anything in public. The only thing I had done before was contributing to Stack Overflow, which I think all developers are familiar with. Like 10 years ago, when Stack Overflow launched, I was in a period in my career where sort of I wanted to join big tech, and this was before I joined Amazon, and I wanted to sort of start honing a little bit on my coding skills and tech skills. So I thought this might be a good exercise to just answer a bunch of questions about JavaScript, MySQL, and other stuff that I knew about. And I was extremely successful there. Like I think for about 2 years, I was like the top 50 pairs people by, Stack Overflow. Like even nowadays that I haven't answered anything in almost 10 years, I still have, I still rank like 0.1% or 0.01% of all people. And so it was very helpful to many people. According to the Stack Overflow stats, I had like 10 million people or some crazy number. I don't know how how credible that is, but there's probably millions of views on my questions and answers. But it didn't really help me. I think another interesting thing about the stats on Stack Overflow is that I think I only got like 25,000 views on my Stack Overflow profile ever, like total in these since 2009. That's whereas, for example, on Twitter, I get like 250,000 profile clicks a month, right? So pretty much I get like 10x in a month what I got in a lifetime on Stack Overflow by being 0.01 top users there. So I think it's good sometimes to reevaluate because you might be helping people, but it might not be helping you. And again, I'm not necessarily saying like Stack Overflow is the wrong thing, but it sort of made me realize how much more impact you can have if sort of you're a bit more thoughtful about where you deploy your energy, right? And there's, for example, writing open source. I'm curious to hear about Zeno about this actually, since he has like some extremely successful open source projects. But for example, he created Clipboard.js, right? Zeno, I believe, right? And it's something that I had used before, but until recently, I never knew it was you who built it, right? I think we even used it at Amazon. I was, a big fan of it. There's something about, basically Zeno helped me 4 years ago without without him knowing. But the problem is that I didn't even know it was him helping me, right? So sometimes, sometimes that's a problem if what you want to do is getting known, right? I mean, I think you have to be careful because I think when it's easier to do business when the people you're trying to sell you already know you, right? So I think that's definitely a takeaway that I got from sort of this experience of self-publishing. In fact, I prefer the term making yourself known rather than building an audience. I think it's probably more accurate in terms of its value, right? That's what you probably would want to try to do because it significantly increases your odds of success, right? Of meeting the expectation of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, there's a component on Stack Overflow and GitHub where you are definitely helping a lot of people and impacting a lot of people, right? People that you have no idea who they are and how big you're helping them. But there are all these other interactions that are much more one-on-one, right? Like Randall did with the resume reviews. So that was like a one-on-one experience that just adds so much value. Or your Twitter review. I did one recently too with like GitHub repos. And it's such a crazy feeling, right? You're helping someone directly. It's almost like you're having this super high touch experience. And there's definitely a different feeling of retribution. With GitHub and Stack Overflow, if someone answers your question, you don't necessarily want to like repay them in some way or another, right? If you use someone's npm package, you don't necessarily have this feeling of, oh my gosh, I need to do something for them. But if you have those one-on-one experiences like the resume review, the Twitter profile review, now you want to give back somehow. And if that person comes with a book at the end of the year, boom, now you're going to sell it, right? So I definitely think there's an aspect to this too.
Yeah. And I think I think the opportunity comes when you can almost get the best of both worlds. Like I feel like in Twitter in particular, like, I significantly prefer responding to people publicly rather than in DMs. And I do prioritize those, like, public comments and questions. I literally reserve time every day to try to go to all of them. DMs, unfortunately, sometimes I miss them just because I get too many. But when you reply to somebody publicly on Twitter, you're helping them one-on-one. You get that feeling that, you asked me a question and I literally replied directly to you, right, to answer exactly what you asked me. But the benefit is that typically you'd get another 500 people, 1,000 people sort of seeing that answer, right? So I think sort of you get a little bit of a side effect where other people who didn't necessarily ask the question, they see the one-on-one interaction happening, and it's just sort of the benefits almost spill over a little bit, right? And they scale, right? Which is really fascinating. I think sort of I've been trying another experiment where I set up a Circle page. I'm abusing Circle, the tool that which is typically used for community building. But I created a page where I'm inviting people to just ask me anything, right? I have a link in my Twitter bio and my personal website, but the only difference is that it's public, right? Which sort of I've been trying to move away from answering people over email and over DM, just because it's to a scale right now that answering people one-on-one on private channels, I'm struggling to keep up with it, right? So I'm just trying to find ways now where I can pretty much do the same work, but at least other people can just, if you go to my Ask Me Anything page, there's like 250 questions that I answered in the last couple of months about various topics, right? And you can sort of see the question, see me answering specifically the question that got asked, and anyone can ask a question, right? So the benefit is still there, but it's a bit more scalable, right? I think it sort of helps. Selfishly, right? It helps me more, right? It's just because I think it helps me more as well, but I think it also increases the chances that I do answer your question if you ask me publicly, right? So it probably helps even the person who wants to get the answer from me, right? Just because there's like I'm much more motivated to answer something if it's public versus if it's just in my email inbox and I'm going to spend 30 minutes writing it.
Yeah, it's a win-win situation where the quality of your response is going to be much better once it's public, and other people are going to benefit once it's public too. So I love that concept.
So I just want to add one more because we're talking about how to get an audience. I think one of the underrated things, and some people are doing it, I think Sean is also someone who did it, is kind of writing in public or sharing your drafts in public. And you can do this before you start writing a book. I'm doing this with a software engineer's guidebook. I have a dedicated Twitter account, which I'm now writing this on mobile at scale, but it already has 1,500 people following it. And I if you look back, I shared like some drafts that I was writing as I was writing it, and it does two things. First, it spreads awareness, and usually, you get to share as you're writing pretty in-depth content, a few pages and so on that people don't really see, and you also get early feedback. I found Twitter to be a really good tool on this. But I think the one thing I would take away, there's no one way to do it. I think a lot of us heard about Daniel doing things one way, but I found there's so many ways of doing it. There's a guy who's not even here who wrote a book totally in private, and it's doing very well on Amazon. So I think but like getting feedback in public is pretty cool. And maybe Sean has something to add here.
Hi. So sorry, I just joined. I had a work meeting. Real life, am I right? Anyway, yeah, I wrote a quarter of my book is blog posts, former blog posts that I've just like a best of thing. Like it helps to really build trust in your writing and your content, and then 75% of it is new content. And then I wrote 2 chapters, live streamed online for 5 hours each. Yeah, people actually watched and they contributed. stuff, and that was really cool. And then I released those chapters, and one of them really hit. It was the How to Market Yourself chapter, and that generated a lot of opportunities for me. I think 2 podcasts and 3 talks directly just from that one blog post and chapter release. So I think it's a really good marketing strategy, especially if you're unknown. It's a good way to just show that you're writing about important stuff, and people can get a free sample of what you want, what you do. I agree that it's not the only way to succeed, but as a first-time author, I thought it was a very interesting way to de-risk. You do have to work a lot harder because then you have to, do an order of magnitude more content just to make up for the fact that you just gave one away for free.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share, because I did something similar to what Sean did. So for example, and this is something that you can do very well with Gumroad and cannot do with other platforms. So for example, my 7th book, I wrote it as one chapter delivered to Gumroad every 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 6 months period, the readers get the full book. And it's very good because as you write chapters, you get questions that you can answer in the following chapters. And then every time, every 2 weeks, you can also you get an excuse to talk about your book, to say, I just released this chapter, and then more people buy it. And then you get early reviews, which maybe get you appearance on podcast, or you can publish them and get even more readers interested. And this is something which is very good and that you can do very easily with Gumroad, because you have this relationship with the reader, you have their email, and they receive the chapters or the book via email, so they can reply to you directly. And so you get to talk with many more readers.
I have a question to you about pricing too, because I saw that both Gergely and Sean, they don't just sell their books, right? And they also have some extra stuff on top of it. So for example, the tech resume is $20 for the book only, but then there's a complete package for $39 where you have slides, videos, that sort of thing. And Sean is even more aggressive, right? He has like a $59 book, and there's a creator package that you have access to videos, to a whole community. So love to hear more about what you guys feel about that strategy of bundling up with other.
I guess. So I guess I'll tackle it. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an extra commitment. Of course, you don't have to do it the way that I did. Basically, I wanted to offer live engagement because that's the way that I want to experience my books. I think that a lot of times you read a book and you just finished it and you want to talk about it with your friends, but none of your friends have read it. So then it just kind of dies out. So it's a nice way to just have an ongoing book club and access to the author. And I think that's worth something. So I will willingly charge for it. I think I charge like $40 more on top of the book. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing that everyone should do. I think I tweeted once that every author should have every book should have its own Discord, and sell access to it, whatever, because it does take up time, but I think it's worth it because you as a reader get more out of it. So I really like that. And what's the other thing? Yeah, I think for me it's also like an exercise to charge more, right? Like some people do have the ability do have both the means and the willingness to want more out of you. So you have to give them a way to do it. If you only put up your book and have one price, then that's the only way they're allowed to pay you for it. So open up more opportunities for them to pay you.
Yeah, no, I'll just echo that. I actually did a tech resume inside out as more of an MVP. It was meant to be one chapter, less than one chapter in the software engineer's guidebook, and I just put it out as an MVP. And I didn't feel good about charging too much for it because there's so many resume scams and so much worthless stuff. But it is valuable. It is the best resource out there for technical resumes. There's nothing better right now. And I figured, well, I saw how much Daniel was charging, and I think I could actually charge more. And Hacker News people told me I should charge more, but I just wanted to add a little extra content. And my thinking was, all right, here's the book. It'll probably take you 5 hours to read because it's a bunch of content, or I'll record in an hour and a half everything you need to know. So if you don't want to have the time or you want to hear my voice, and actually recording that thing took a while, but it's actually doubled the sales in terms of dollar revenue. So 30% of people buy the package that costs double the price, and I actually just feel good about the pricing this way. So and it's a great practice. I actually like. I got this idea from you, Zeno, actually, because when I bought one of your things, it was the Dracula theme. There's a small video with you where you say, "Hey, thanks for buying." It's just like, I don't know, like what, less than a minute, but I felt really good of having a connection with the author, and maybe some people like this as well. Plus, what I did with my premium package, I actually partnered with a couple of people who I like their products, and I just throw in discount coupons where I typically, it depends. What some of them I do get a kickback, but what some of them I don't, and we just help each other's business and things that are relevant for technical resume, a design interview book, or the different resume service.
So to offer a bit of a counter sort of argument, maybe, although not necessarily, I think these are all great ideas, great optimizations, I believe. Right, these are ways to sort of increase your average sort of purchase price and provide more options and give buyer more options to pay you more. I think, and I think, however, when you're just starting out, like if this is your first ebook, first info product, there's so many variables. Is there enough interest? Will I be able to market it? Is this a product that is going to sell? Is the price too high, too low, and so on and so forth? I wouldn't bother with bundling and packaging or optimizing the price too much in the beginning. Right? I think what you'd want to do in the beginning is just try to have something modestly successful, right? That meets some low expectation. Make $10,000 in a year. Right? Something, it depends on the individual and how much time you're committing to it and other things. But something small, right? Because I think it's much easier than to optimize something that's working and add options later, or maybe add options in your second product or things like that. Rather than, because I think the trap then is that